When we think of Julius Caesar, we picture the legend, right? The conquering general, the brilliant politician, the guy who basically remade the entire Roman world. He was, as Shakespeare put it, the foremost man of all this world.
And that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth did he pull it off? How did he subdue all of Gaul, this massive territory filled with fierce, independent tribes, and then push into places like Britain and Germany where Romans had never even dared to go? What was his secret sauce?
Well, the crazy thing is, the answer is hiding in plain sight. Caesar himself gave us the key in his own book, The Commentaries on the Gallic War. See, he didn't just make history, he wrote it. And in this explainer, we're going to decode that writing, not just as a history book, but as one of the most powerful and effective strategic manuals ever created.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll see why the book itself was a weapon. Then we'll dive into his revolutionary use of speed, his mastery of engineering, his psychological games, and finally, we'll explore why this ancient text is still so relevant today. First things first, we have to get one thing straight. The commentaries are not a diary, not even close. These were basically dispatches, field reports, sent back to Rome to be read aloud in the forum, shaping public opinion and building his political brand while he was hundreds of miles away on campaign. Now, this quote is incredible, mainly because of who said it. This is Cicero, Caesar's biggest political rival. For even his opponent to admit that the writing was so perfect that no other historian dared even try to rewrite it, well, that tells you everything. Caesar's famously simple, direct style wasn't just good writing. It was a tool, designed to make every single one of his actions sound logical, necessary, and absolutely brilliant.
This chart really nails the difference. See, a normal history book tells you what happened. Caesar's book tells you why it had to happen, and it always casts him as the calm, decisive hero acting for the good of Rome. Every victory is hard-earned, every setback is a teachable moment, and every brutal act is just a regrettable necessity. He's controlling the entire narrative in real time.
So controlling the story was his first weapon. His second? Pure, unadulterated speed. Before Caesar, warfare in this part of the world was often this slow, predictable, seasonal thing. Well, Caesar just ripped up that rulebook.
He basically weaponized swiftness, a concept the Romans called Soleritas. And listen, this wasn't just about marching fast. This was about moving so incredibly fast that you completely shattered your enemy's ability to think, plan, or react. Imagine an entire legion just appearing on your doorstep when you thought they were weeks away. That's the terrifying power of Soleritas.
So what did this actually look like? Well, while his enemies expected him to be hunkered down for the winter, Caesar would be force-marching his army through snowstorms and over mountains to launch a surprise attack, catching them totally off guard. He denied his enemies the one thing they needed to organize against him: time.
But speed alone wasn't the whole story. Caesar's legions weren't just the fastest army in the world. They were also the greatest and most terrifying construction company. He understood that engineering was just as much a weapon of war as a sword. Just let that sink in for a second. 10 days to build a bridge strong enough to carry tens of thousands of soldiers across a huge, wild river. This wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. As he wrote himself, this was a message. It was to show the Germanic tribes that the Roman army both could and dared to cross the Rhine. It was a statement of pure technological and psychological dominance. And you can tell just how proud he was of this because he lays out the whole process in such detail in the commentaries. His men weren't just soldiers, they were a rapid deployment engineering corps. They could build bridges, forts, siege works, you name it, faster than anyone thought humanly possible, literally turning the landscape itself into a weapon. And the ultimate, most mind-blowing example of this was at the Battle of Alesia. He trapped the entire Gallic army inside their fortress by building an 11-mile wall all the way around them. Then, and this is the insane part, when a massive Gallic relief army showed up, he just built a second wall facing outwards and defeated them both. He won a two-front war from the inside out with shovels. It's incredible. But Caesar's greatest weapon, it wasn't made of wood and it wasn't made of iron. It was his deep understanding of the human mind. Beyond all the speed and the engineering, Caesar was an absolute master psychologist. He knew that war wasn't just about breaking an enemy's army.
It was about breaking their will to fight, while at the same time building up the courage of your own men. Okay, the sheer audacity of this move is just brilliant. His troops were terrified of the enemy army approaching. So what does Caesar do? He doesn't calm them down. He wildly exaggerates the enemy's numbers, making them sound impossibly huge. In one move, he seizes control of the rumor mill, makes the actual threat seem smaller by comparison, and makes himself the only source of truth. It's genius.
And that was just one tool in his kit. He could show calculated mercy to a defeated tribe to turn them into allies, or he could be brutally cruel to another to make a terrifying example of them. He even raised and paid for an entire legion, the Aula da Budia, out of his own pocket, which meant their loyalty was to him, not to Rome. He just understood the human element of war better than anyone.
So you take these psychological tactics, you combine them with his mastery of speed and engineering, and what you get is a playbook for power that is echoed down through the centuries. That's why this 2,000-year-old book is still required reading at military academies and corporate boardrooms all over the world. The principles are just timeless. I mean, the influence is undeniable. Caesar's methods became the foundation of Roman military doctrine. Centuries later, Napoleon was obsessed with the commentaries and modeled his own campaigns on them. Today, the modern military concept of maneuver warfare, this idea of collapsing the enemy's will to fight instead of just destroying them physically, that's pure Caesar. Even business strategies about blitz scaling or shaping a market narrative draw a direct line right back to his playbook. Ultimately, Caesar's commentaries are so much more than a war story. They're a blueprint for how to build and wield power. And that leaves us with the central question his life will always pose. Is this playbook a guide to achieving greatness? Or is it a chilling warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition? The answer, I think, really depends on who's reading it and why. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.